Paul is going to be our first speaker, and he's going to talk to us about the findings from the exploratory work. So, Paul, over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Helen, and good morning, everyone. Also from my side, welcome to this focus session. Can you hear me well? Excellent. So indeed, as Dimitri mentioned, and also Ellen alluded to, so I will walk you through the key figures and the key takeaways from the Eurosystem exploratory work that was conducted last year, bearing in mind that the ECB recently published its detailed report available on this website for a deeper dive and more detailed information. But if we starting with recapping what exploratory work was about. So as Dimitri mentioned, exploratory work was a public-private partnership conducted with market stakeholders and the Eurosystem between May and November 2024 last year. It focused on testing what the Eurosystem calls interoperability solutions. So these correspond conceptually to solutions where central bank money and DLT assets would sit on distinct DLT infrastructure, with a focus then on establishing the necessary interoperability between these infrastructures for safe settlement of these assets in central bank money. So these solutions were made available to the market to test the use cases and the business cases that they they brought forward and they wanted to explore with the Eurosystem in two modes, so to speak. So either to explore these test cases in experiments where the use case was tested in mock settings and test environments, or in trials where actual settlement took place within a specific and limited framework, with settlement in central bank money taking place in our target services. As Dimitri mentioned, the Eurosystem for this exercise provided three solutions that you see here on the right-hand side of the slide, developed by national central banks of the Eurosystem and made available for the trials and the experiments. So this included the trigger solution of the Deutsche Bundesbank, the TIPS hashlink solution of Banca d'Italia, and the full DLT interoperability of Banque de France. So you will see here in the slide that the relevant links are made available if you want to know more about the solutions. First in the general annex to the report, there's an overview of the three solutions, and then each national central bank has provided extensive documentation for trials and experiments on how their solution works. So these links are available for your reference. The three solutions, as I said, conceptually all represented different instances of an interoperability approach. They varied among themselves in terms of the exact technology used, in terms of the form, in the form of central bank money, and also how exactly, from a technical perspective, interoperability is established for the purpose of settlement. So I would also here refer you to this detailed documentation for more information on these solutions. If we then go to the next slides over the key figures from exploratory work, you will see first on the left-hand side that the market interest for this exercise was extremely high. So we had overall 64 stakeholders coming from 9 different countries that took part in the experiments and the trials. And this made the exploratory work the largest initiative of its kind across the world at the moment. But in addition to this geographical diversity and the stakeholders coming from different jurisdictions, there was also a lot of diversity because market stakeholders, as you can see here, came from different parts of the value chain, different parts of payments and capital markets. So you can see here, for instance, commercial banks, CSDs, also pilot regime platforms took part in the exercise. So this really contributed to the success of the initiative, and in particular to the diversity of the use cases that we saw. Because as you can see then in the middle of the slide, we overall had more than 50 trials and experiments that were conducted with many use cases, not only on the security side, but also on the payments side. And these use cases tested realistic business scenarios and events across the value chain of wholesale markets, not limited to the settlement part. So this is something I will also come back to in a few minutes. I would also like to maybe underline how this exploratory work revealed the dynamic and innovative ecosystem in Europe. You can see this, for instance, with the many high-level digital bond issuances that took place in Europe at the occasion of the trials, and also by the high number of transactions that were settled as part of trials, with over 1.6 billion euros settled. In parallel to all this activity and the exploratory work, the Eurosystem also set up a dedicated market engagement strategy in parallel via a dedicated market contact group, but also setting up over 40 bilateral and multilateral meetings with key market stakeholders. And this really enabled the Eurosystem to gain key feedback in addition to the direct findings from the trials and the experiments. So I would also like to take this opportunity then to thank all the participants to exploratory work, but also all the market stakeholders that engaged with the Eurosystem at the occasion for their input and their engagement. If we now have a more detailed look at the use cases, so you can see on the slides the 50 plus use cases I have mentioned, and you can see that they were very diverse, exploring very different scenarios that lead to settling large value wholesale payments in central bank money. If we start with the trials, so the real transactions that took place that appear in blue on the slides, you can see that they were focused on the settlement in central bank money of DLT assets, in particular, the issuance of securities on DLT. This was in line with our expectation, and the eligibility criteria that we set out for the trials. But notably, market stakeholders beyond the issuance process also were keen to explore additional parts of the value chain beyond issuance and also secondary market activity. So this included, for instance, in trials, exploring the lifecycle management of securities, the redemption process, also repo transactions and fund subscription that were put forward and tested by the market in the trials. If we have a look at the experiments then that appear in green on the slide, you can see here an even wider range of use cases, including the securities side, similarly to the trials, but also exploring payments use cases. And if we focus on those use cases for a minute, you will see that this included both domestic payments in the context of Europe, but also international cross-border payments beyond Europe with other currency areas. So domestically, the types of use cases tested including, for instance, the management of smart contracts, derivative products that automated all related payments in central bank money, also the automation of margin calls, managing and recording interbank claims, and then settling the resulting net claim in central bank money, and as well as facilitating the transfer of commercial bank money deposit tokens across DLT platforms. And on the international side, which you see at the bottom of this slide, so the Eurosystem tested how to settle payment versus payment transactions jointly with other central banks. And this was in particular done through Project Meridian FX in partnership with the BIS Innovation Hub. Thanks to all the participants to exploratory work, the Eurosystem was able to compile a very detailed overview of each of the more than 50 use cases. So if we have sufficiently piqued your curiosity with this slide, I would invite you to have a look at this comprehensive overview for more details. But I can already flag a key takeaway from the Eurosystem perspective of this very diverse and range of use cases, which is that this shows that the interest from the market to apply these new technologies in DLT extends beyond the settlement process, but across the value chain. So market stakeholders were keen indeed to link, for instance, different processes, different types of operations, such as the payment of a bond coupon, but also interbank reconciliations, as we've seen, or managing derivative products, to link that directly with the settlement in central bank money in an automated way, using DLT features and aspects of the new technologies, including so-called smart contracts. So beyond these key takeaways, I will now take a few minutes to highlight how the findings from exploratory work have informed the Eurosystem's decision to pursue, as Dimitri explained, a two-track approach with Pontes and Appia. So starting with Pontes, the first point to flag, of course, is as I said, the very high interest from the market in exploratory work. So highlighting a very strong market demand to explore DLT. Beyond that, and in particular, as we can see from the very high number of trials, which required from the market side investments in the necessary legal, operational, and technical work under a very tight 6-month period. So the fact that many stakeholders managed to do that and to conduct trials in the 6-month window shows how active and innovative the ecosystem in Europe is. And it also shows that many in the market are keen to look into the implementation of these new technologies in production beyond only exploration. The second key takeaway is that, and this was a point that was repeated from all market stakeholders, including beyond those that directly participate in exploratory work. This relates to the importance of providing central bank money for these DLT wholesale transactions, as central bank money is the only risk-free settlement asset available. So many market stakeholders have flagged that without central bank money available, they pointed to the difficulties in scaling their solutions and overall difficulties for the ecosystem in Europe to further grow and maintain its momentum. So the market emphasized the importance for the Eurosystem solutions that were made available in the 6-month trial window to continue being available on a more permanent basis. On that note, the Eurosystem also organized earlier this year a market-wide workshop to discuss the findings from exploratory work with its contact group and the participants to exploratory work. And at this occasion, the market also emphasized the importance of having a short time to market for a central bank money settlement solution for DLT transactions, as well as providing a single offering moving forward instead of a multiplicity of solutions on the Eurosystem side. So you will see that these considerations were key for the Eurosystem's decision to launch this Pontes initiative, and my colleague George will explain that in more details shortly. If we come to the next slides on Appia, you will also see that in addition to these key takeaways that I've just mentioned that were more short-term considerations, there was also important feedback from exploratory work related to the medium and to the long term. The first point that I've already emphasized, in particular from the use case side, is you've seen that the use of new technologies is being explored in a way that can potentially redesign the ways payments and capital markets work today. So this is in particular evidenced by the diverse set of use cases, the fact that many use cases explored aspects beyond only the settlement layer, that many of these use cases investigated, for instance, how to link, as I mentioned, processes and activities which today are outside the scope of current financial market infrastructures. So as a corollary of this very wide impact, this means also that the distribution of roles within this new ecosystem could differ from how these markets operate today, and in particular that services and functions that today are spread across stakeholders and across infrastructures could potentially be merged. Of course, this is a very wide-ranging consideration and would require more analysis from a business policy, legal, and regulatory perspective. So this is a medium to long-term consideration. A second point that Dimitri already alluded to, and that also market stakeholders flagged, is that these changes to the ecosystem and to the way payments and capital markets work, potentially with implementing these technologies, they have the potential to address today's shortcomings. So it is very well documented that there remains a significant degree of fragmentation in European financial markets today. And so as these new technologies in DLT could redesign the way the markets operate, there is an opportunity then to ensure that this new ecosystem is much more integrated and harmonized, and in particular to include these considerations from the onset. So that is a point that Dimitri has already flagged in the introduction, and you've heard, but that is important to flag, is that of course this increased harmonization and integration requires a lot of efforts, but in particular, it requires that the efforts towards harmonization start as the technology is being implemented, rather than only once it has been implemented, possibly in different ways across markets and jurisdictions. So this last point is, of course, key for the Eurosystem's decision to launch the Appia initiative. and in particular to progress on these aspects in parallel to the short term. It is key in the context of Europe, but it also applies more broadly if you consider that the investigation and adoption of DLT is also accelerating worldwide, and that there are current efforts to facilitate cross-border payments. So as Dimitri mentioned, including the international dimension in the SAPIA initiative as the Eurosystem progresses and the market also progresses towards implementation of these new technologies, coordinating with other jurisdictions is also very important. So I will just conclude on my side to flag that, of course, these considerations are wide-ranging. They require to take from the start a medium and long-term perspective in parallel to progressing on the short term. So this is why the Eurosystem launched the SAPIA initiative in parallel to Pontes, and Holger Neuhaus will detail further APIA further in this session. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention, and back to you, Ellen.
Oops, Paul, I disappeared there for a second. Let me bring you back on. Thank you so much, Paul. Excellent for the good presentation. So just for everyone to know, this report is published, right, Paul? We have it on the website, so everyone can go and read into all the details. We are getting a few questions on this. First, there was a simple question. I think you already mentioned this already, Paul, but maybe you want to stress it one more time. People are asking about the trials and experiments. Can you just in one word say what have been the difference between trials and experiments in this work, please?
Yes, of course. So with trials, the use cases that the market put forward and proposed to explore with the Eurosystem were tested in real settings. So this means that the Eurosystem provided an ad hoc limited framework for having real transactions settled with actual central bank money settlement taking place in T2 for all three solutions. And in experiments, the same use cases that the market brought forward were tested in mock settings. So in short, trials involved real money moving, and that meant, of course, more work from a legal, operational, and technical perspective. It also meant that the business cases that were tested in trials were realistic because these were actual transactions and actual services being exchanged in the market.
Excellent, thank you. Then there's also a few questions about, but maybe we will come to that, but I will give you an opportunity here as well. So are there implications on Pontes and APIA for the target services? That maybe because people can't wait for the next few presentations, but you want to give a little bit of a heads up on that?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thanks. No, that's a very good question, and I know indeed my colleagues will explain that in just a second. I would just maybe like to emphasize, to answer this question, the importance of differentiating between the short term on the one hand and the medium and long term on the other hand. So for the short term, as we saw in the trials and exploratory work, we are talking about the interoperability solution. So this implies making a link actually between target services and these DLT platforms. So that's something that George will explain exactly how this will be established. But so of course that means we will rely on our target services also from that perspective. For the medium to long term, I have alluded to, let's say, wide-ranging implications also for the scope of DLT, for the fact that many of the processes that the market in the end wants to implement with these new technologies extends beyond what our current financial market infrastructures can provide in the market globally, not just, of course, the Eurosystem's infrastructures, but that requires a lot more analysis. So that's why under the APIA initiative, this is something that Holger will explain further, but this is a more medium to long-term consideration.
Thank you, Paul. Then we also have people asking about if the Eurosystem will conduct further exploratory work on other implementation approaches, for instance, distribution or integration. So basically continuing the work that you just explained here.
Yeah, so I would suggest to maybe revisit this question after the presentation by Holger, in particular on the APIA initiative. So the short answer is that as part of this APIA initiative, we will look into practical work. So that may include exploring, for instance, how to set up a shared platform or explore these integration distribution approaches conceptually, but as Holger will explain, the focus will be much more targeted in nature than the exploratory work.
Thank you, Paul. And I will almost let you go. There's just one last, there's been a few questions on this. So on the wholesale CBDC, so central bank digital currency, what they issued in the exploratory work, can you say a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. So indeed, as I mentioned, we relied on an ad hoc framework for the trials, and settlement took place in target services. So that meant that in particular for the full DLT interoperability solution, the central bank money settlement actually took place in T2, and the Eurosystem issued cash tokens that were exploratory in nature, with real central bank money staying in the RTGS. I just want to flag that this was not let's say a conceptual design choice on the part of the Eurosystem, but rather a constraint of the limited and tight 6 months time window. So for that purpose, we relied on the existing legal and operational framework we have in our target services, instead of establishing a bespoke framework only for a 6 months period. But George will, I'm sure, explain that in further details in the next part of the session.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. All right, I will let you go. There, we have people already asking about the next session. So I think we will move on to the next track there. I know you guys are very keen on this. It's also a super interesting project coming along. So, bear with us. We will touch all points here today. So thank you to Paul for now. Paul will be staying. So in case there will be more questions for him, we can bring him back